Ane yana kaya hayajane kun cheese the cut you han. Yawe yashkashni kadatawe you took the ton. Chak away ha'ani chuk ha'ani kaye wutien with Tlein ha. John Swanton you do sagan. Ye awe we Lingít tina we yeji wouldn't a Tlein skashni go a couch hit. Ya skashni Tlein. Ye awe ye chwaji okay wutien. We Tleinach Hadu achji. Gwell do a saga. Lekach enach interpreter. Du sai awe gwell Kadishan. John Kadishan. Gwell Du tlach du cheich we skashnik Kuhaantí. Kuhaantí awe adat jik one. Yijikach tune. Yachana. Hesh gwell. Jakudad ya achtuasaku. Yet the cut yande yijikach tune adat. Achawe jakone adat yijikach tune. Guksa ye hawutiyin. Yad sekanen kawakshi ke has kakwati we cook ya Central Council Lingít Kadekina ka Gold Belt Heritage Foundation. Hechosaku anach so Gold Belt you do saga. Hechwasa oti ko atlesh. Tlesh kusti chak. Zanti kahini. Zanti. Shanach Tlein. Itchi shanach. Yada at kashle. Katlach. Shatlach. Katlach Jenny. Sitka. Shay. Sayik. Ak. Ak take. Like ak. Tak. Ak. Tak. Sit. Sit Wushi Kluchohin. Kachtaqowuhin. Teachini. Khatini. Dasatsu. Deshu. Dachanak. Nekai. Antikaltsu. Anach ya andaganya. Wasatu sak. Nadai. Guntin. How? Chukan ani. Tashui. Ya Tlein sang kutzati. Ya Gold Belt Kekuwastien. Het was otiqo. Utusako Tlein goon. Ya hat ya tlatkikach. Najoe Tlein ku yak. Het was oti. Yashkashni kadati jikach tu neko. Ya koe jinkatka dalkun. Ya tu a day ya tu a lock. Kunsa oyecho jinkatka tle dushu. Ajoe Clark yijigachtunia yachana. Ya wanani sawi dunalchi yashinahich. The kachinach at some point their wealth was running out. So as we do this work, we're not overly concerned with a flawless English translation. We're just looking at the parts. You could do some reassembly on your own if you want to. I'm really excited about this book coming out. I'm really lonesome for George and Marge and Ethel. I wish that they were here. I wish I had gotten this done fast enough so that they could see it. But their descendants will, and they'll be with us. They were so fun. I guess we should do, I don't know if I got it on hand.
I'm sure they see everything. They're smiling.
Okay, I think I got this. Okay. Well, in the spirit of the upcoming holiday on next Tuesday, we'll do a little something before we get into our translation, just so you can hear, you hear their voice. They were just so fun to work with. And Tlingit's got so much fun stuff. So we'll just hear this and watch this real quick, and then we'll get to our work.
An empty skull would be the shakahago.
Mm-hmm.
It the shakahago.
Empty skull.
Oh,
Shakahago.
no brains in it.
But with all your brains and everything, it's shakanuko.
When your brains are all in there.
So, shakahagu and shakanuku. It's so fun. And so shakahagu would, the word hagu would be like if you found a clamshell and it's all dried out and there's nothing on the inside. That could be called hagu. A person's skeleton could be called hagu. It means everything's just been, there's nothing left there. It's all been removed and dried up. And then shakanuku would be a shell on the head. So you got an empty, I don't know, an empty clamshell kind of thing on the head, which would be no brains, and then brains would be chakanuku. So they were fun. They would just drop kind of random things like that, and you get a little feel for it. So that was Kuhaantí, George Davis, and Shakshani, Marge Dudson, which also, just to prep us, I do have a whole bunch of recordings of them working together that were so fun. I'll try and find some where we just recorded them just talking. But a lot of the work that I did with them was just going through and looking at things like my kids had this little game. We found it at a thrift store. And the whole idea is opposites. And I was like, oh, my wife picked it up and she said, this would be really fun. And as I went through it, I realized I didn't know how to say these things. And so I just took pictures of these cards and went with them. I went to them and we just went through it all. But this is one of the first things that we probably completed together. And so on the left is Kuhaantí, George Davis. He's Tlein Tan. He was born in the Huna area, but he grew up in Cake. His father was from Cake. His father was Saguidi. And his father was named Lloyd Davis. And so he had a Cake dialect. He spoke the Cake dialect for sure. And so we keep it on a lot of the things that he worked on. And on the right is Shakshani Marge Dudson. She's Ishkitan. Her family does come from the Tlein area, but she mostly grew up in Douglas, and then also was raised by a lot of people in Huna. So she spoke Northern Tlingit, so I never knew her to have a Tlein dialect accent. She didn't really speak that dialect. We mostly worked at George's house when we did this stuff, so we would just set up. George's wife was amazing, and so she would do a lot of the coordination of schedules and make sure that people weren't, because they had a lot of activities at their house, and she would make sure that the house was pretty quiet when we did our work. And so here he's translating this. All these projects, someday they'll just be unearthed. This one is a word of the week, where I've got like a different sentence for these 52 words, which I'll unveil at some point. So they're wonderful. They're so much fun. They're so brilliant and they're so good with the language. So here's where we left off. And who would like to read sentence number 15?
Yaududzaka her ishachech idat ach owe ir shach kuget udzigit wehin yegi.
Sheesh. Yeyadidzaka hesh ishchet Yidata Jawi Ishat to gate with the gitwe heen yegi. And where are the verbs? Yeah, so we're going to grab the ye in front of it.
Oh,
Ischgeitel.
Hitlischhet.
Would
Yeah, we'll grab a to gate in front of it.
yeah.
I feel like herds of buffalo that run across the room upstairs from us, and so it happens periodically. Okay, so let's deal with everything that's not a verb.
Now.
You did?
now.
Okay.
Chile, because of that.
He shot his wife.
Your wife. And the CH is she did something, whatever the verb that's coming up, she's the one who did it. And then what about way he niegi?
The water spirit. Spirit.
Yeah.
Ye yao du zi ka. Do we have any luck with that?
Someone told her him. Thus, someone told her him.
Yeah, so when we get to this fourth person, duh, as like interpreters, you could say someone said to them, or you could say it was said to them. It's kind of up to you, and you'll find like sometimes it fits better. Like I would probably say it was said to them, and this would be. Sometimes people do this in like toxic ways, like people are saying you're not a good teacher. So, but just in Tlinga, it's just sort of like this is what people are saying, So yeyo ditzaka, and so this is a yausaka that we've seen before, but once you have d, it's going to push that sika to switch to zika. It just has to happen. I want to say ishchet. I do think. I'm just gonna make it long for now. The book's in print. So I'm not gonna worry. Don't worry about it.
You just do that.
Someone somewhere is gonna watch this video and just curse my name.
Know the most link in the room. We can't argue with you.
It's like they're unlucky.
Yeah.
Yes, and so, but who is unlucky?
You.
You, right? You are unlucky, right?
Oh, because of
So, to sort of, we can start to put the pieces together, right? Who's being told this information?
The girl and her husband, their wolf is running out. Somebody said.
Well, probably one person is being told this because we've got it.
Oh yeah.
It's a singular, and then
So the girl, yeah.
the
No.
husband.
No.
husband, right?
It's the husbands.
So, right, it's being said to him, you are unlucky now because your wife verbed the hinyegi.
She insulted. Wait, sorry, you weren't there yet.
Yes, no, that's great. Yeah, so to gate would to get would be she insulted it. She did something to violate its feelings. Okay.
So when I looked it up, I came up with fell, and obviously that's not right.
No,
Because
okay.
I thought Yegi was down.
It's not right, but it's not wrong. I would say that. And so let's go to the verb dictionary and
Yeah, I found tiptoed.
tiptoed. Oh, really? Okay.
Not entirely sure where that came from. I had a lot of very creative notes on this.
It makes the story interesting. Like if you tiptoe past the water spirit,
Context. And I was like,
you lose all your work.
Surprisingly, I also had tiptoe.
Fowler. fallen, and then I was in the verb thing and I clicked on, I think it must have been the would to get, and in front of it there was one that said to get and it was insulted.
Okay, so we have what to get. So we're gonna look up geet. We're looking for, I think it's gonna be a DZI is how they're writing their classifiers here. So we'll go down to G. Here's geet right here. Where we're gonna get confused, I believe, is there's two verbs that are actually identical in terms of the classifier and the stem. But we have two different roots. So there is a root to fall, which is this one. There is a root to do something, which is this one. Right? And so in this case, we can see we have zigit, which is our verb, but we have to have gate in front of it, which I'll show you how to find that. So we have kut zigit, to get lost, kada dak zigit, to be elected, and we're not getting. It means like to fall on the people like rain, which is kind of cool. So let's take a look at the other one. So now we have to do something. This capital A usually is an indirect object, or like it's often a noun. A gay zagit. That's getting us pretty close. So what we're having is this gate part, this G high tone E-I-T. The way that it's marked down is usually as gay, and we have, with this hyphen, means there's usually going to be a suffix on there. So that T is a suffix. And so what it means is to either encounter or to go against. But it doesn't always mean like to battle or to argue, because it could mean something's leaning up against something, right? But if you said a gate with a git, just on its own, a gate with a git, you're saying they broke the law. There's something bad, right? I knew one elder, she liked to get in trouble. She loved shenanigans. And so she used this verb to come up with the word for shenanigans, which was really fun. But here we have ka, to gate with the git, which is to offend. This is our verb. This ka, we would write that now as a capital N. So a capital N plus to gate, like, let's see if we got it in the other dictionary. I don't know. I can guarantee that we've got it. Maybe we do. So for this one, we're going to show the table of contents. We'll go down to geet in here, which is under the verb section. We'll go down a bit. And so here's falling and moving. So what I'm trying to do with this dictionary is to clearly separate the verb roots. And so for some of them, we don't all agree, like ton. If you look at some of the work in the verb database, you'll see a whole bunch of verbs under ton. But when I put it into this dictionary, I was like, I think there's like 8 different ton, maybe 10. And so we're not at number 1, we are at number 2. So at gate, and then I guess I don't have to gate. So it does mean to offend or to violate. And so we'll take a look at what kind of examples they have. So here's the underlined word. We'll go look up offend, and we get here. Please forgive me, you all. To gate if was a git. Maybe I have offended you. To gate was a git. They offended people. What they did was not approved of. So in this case, Hinyegi to gate with a git. Offended the water spirits. But in this case, she offended it, the water spirit. Okay, now it sounds like stamping of the feet for approval of the translation of that sentence. So the creatures upstairs approve in their, it's like they're having a kuika.
Can I ask just like a story comprehension, just up to this point? Which of the two girls married the rich guy?
Okay, the leader's daughter,
Okay,
not Sahan.
Okay. Okay, that's
Also, in this sentence, why is it that Atugate Witzigit is before Wehin Yegi?
Yes, because you could say Wehin Yegi to gate Wutzigit. But what Tlingit wants to do is it will switch to a third person very regularly. And when it does this, so there's a very slight difference here. Because if you were to say the water spirit is the important thing, the water spirit was offended. But here the important thing is she offended the water spirit. So it's a lot like in English, like word order does in Tlingit what emphasis marking does in English, right? So you'd say because she offended the water spirit, as opposed to because she offended the water spirit. So wherever you put that emphasis shows you what's the important thing. But for Tlingit, it's usually going to do that by switching the word order.
Right, okay, that makes sense.
Okay. You okay? 16. Can I get a reader?
Dushat wanyach wagut tuyachtitin heltu tua ushgowel ushikeye atastu ye utiye.
Sheesh. Du shat wanyak o wagut du yitkitin. Es du toashku wishishake at has du chuche uti. Any verbs in here? Yeah.
Wanyach,
Wagut.
Wagut,
Kind of almost
Tutua Ushku,
grab that whole thing. Hesti tua ushku.
Utiye,
Utiye.
Yeah.
Astukuch. Yuti.
Uti. So the 1, 2, 3 verb phrases and some stuff in between. So du yitkitin.
With your children?
With their children.
Let's use just a third person. Okay. And then the second noun phrase.
badness, evilness.
Evil thing. So you do have ut right here. So that means wiklushikei ut is an evil thing, a bad thing. Okay, now we're down to verbs. Du shat wanyach uwagut.
I thought Dushat was like wife or something.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be a noun?
Say it again.
Wouldn't that be a noun?
It is a noun, but I'm making it part of this verb phrase because one yak is part of the verb. And then you can't say one yak on its own, it has to belong to something. So yes, it is a noun, but it's a noun that can't be removed from this verb phrase without making the verb incomprehensible.
That
Okay.
walked away from.
Yes, and so the one yak, it's probably worth looking up. Let's go here. We'll go to the Lingít section. W. And it is in here as one na. It might be as one ya as well. I don't think so though. Okay, so this is where it gets a little tricky, is sometimes you do have spelling variations. And this is a really interesting, so it means separate, apart from, keeping away from, aloof from, more than a number. As far as how this works in terms of meaning, if I were to hear someone say, du shut one yak uwagut, I would say, he left her. That's a breakup term right there. Is one yak is be like. So when we were collecting some phrases for like healthy communication and relationships, and this was one that did come up to say they split up. So he left her with you could say you could say like that could be a hustu, like who's, I don't want to get into whose children. Sorry. Maybe that should have been a hustu. But
So did he leave with her children, took the children with him, or did she leave her, but she's with the children?
he left her and took the kids.
Who took the kids?
He took the kids.
Took the kid.
Oh wait, maybe. Dushat Banyak.
What's telling us that?
Okay. Because I would expect it to be Hastu Banyak Uwagut Dushat Kaduyetki. So you would have to have, because the one yak is the one that's separate. Although that could be interpreted either way. I never thought about that.
It's kind of ambiguity in both Lingít and English then.
Right, but if you say he left his wife with the children, that could go either way in English too, right?
Yeah.
So
No, because if he took the children and left, or he left her with the children. Those are opposite things.
yeah.
Well,
I would.
no, but he left her with the children could still mean that he left with the children and she's, like.
I think
Maybe he and the children left her.
I think he took the kids because you get uwa good to yetkitin. If you just said adewu good to yetkitin, he went over there with his kids.
Right.
Otherwise, you would usually say dushat ka du yetki. Hastu wanyak uwa good.
But it doesn't specify in there he took, like, per se. It just says he left.
Yeah, he left with the kids, and so.
Okay. Which is enough to say, yeah, he was, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but I guess it's open to interpretation. That's interesting. I would probably lean towards he took the kids.
Yeah, in the context of like, if she's the one that's bad luck.
Yeah, in the context of the next sentence.
Yeah, because, well, he said he didn't want it to be among them, so he took the kids so that they didn't have to be with this bad luck thing.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
But that English translation is kind of confusing because that makes it sound like he left the kids with his wife.
Yeah. He and the children left his wife, I guess. But see, now if you keep going with Lingít, you will probably end up doing translation work at some point. Because when we get into advanced Lingít, and someday when we have a true fourth-year language program, it's probably gonna be an awful lot of listening to Lingít and just practicing our translation skills. You will have a lot of decisions to make as you move it to English, which is, if you just read through this document, we're not really fine-tuning the English. So he and the children left his wife.
They did not want.
He didn't want. And that could be an ambiguous they as well. So this is the other thing too, is Lingít uses third person so much.
I came up with called to them.
Yeah.
I see where, okay.
To be called to them.
Chuch is not a verb. And this chuch.
I came up with that she did not want her husband to be evil.
Oh, okay, interesting. Okay, so the shushikayat is an evil thing. It's a noun. He did not want the evil thing to be among them all. So we just started looking at these direction and locational things. So who means among. My favorite places on earth is if you drive in between Skagway and Carcross, Once you get up into the mountain, you're going to go to this little place called Aksanihu, among the little lakes. I just really like that area. The creatures upstairs really like that name. They keep stomping. So Hu means among. And so if you listen, like a lot of times, you might say, I feel good to be among you all. One time at the language nest, there was a child, might have been mine, who was mad and kind of throwing a fit and just kind of pouting over in the corner. And our elder who was there said, he doesn't want to be among the people, right? And so what you're seeing is the repetitive suffix. So we're seeing these suffixes pop up. We're starting to notice them more. To gate, that's that one, to be at, to arrive at. This one also means to be at, but repeatedly or moving around at. So that's why you say duchuch yeuti. He didn't want this evil to be among them all, his children. That's a lot packed into just one sentence. So fun.
I have a question about the wanach
Oh,
urgut. So is dushat then the object of that verb?
say it again.
So the dushat wanach urgut, dushat is the object then of wanach urgut?
Well, motion verbs usually don't have objects, like unless they're the carrying verbs. So like going, coming, driving, there's usually not an object there unless you're driving someone. That could work. Like when you say you're walking, it's a subject only verb. And then what you can add some stuff into the preverb. And so there's kind of an object there, but it's more like du shet wan yang good, saying he went away from her, is really what it's saying. And you could say du nak wugud, he left her behind. Du khande wugud, he went to her. And so it is functioning kind of, I don't think it's really an object because it's just saying where that motion is going. It's talking about where that motion is going and what kind of motion it is.
Got you.
So where does the, like, if you said het dutuaushku we ishki adhastuhu, doesn't that mean he didn't want an evil thing to come among them all? So what does the ye uti ye mean in that whole thing? Because I think you say it all without the ye uti ye.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so if that's a great question. So like if we look at this and we just sort of have this here, and then if we had these as two separate verbs, it came among them, or it is among them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is something you might say, sickness is among the people. Someone came among the people, right? So these are just two separate phrases. They don't want it, the it or
Oh,
they.
okay, I get it. It's kind of the action, like to be among them. Yeah, I get it now. Yeah.
Usually,
Otherwise, you don't. Yeah.
when you go
Yeah.
like this, now there is that or when it came upon them. He doesn't want will be among them. So this is the same kind of mechanism we're seeing in like yake, and then we yuch, sitin. But if you tie them together, this verb has to change. So that changes to a, and that gets a suffix. So that's how, whenever you say want or don't want, and you've got a verb, you're going to want it to be in that relational form. So it's usually called a subordinate verb. Like it's this, that, the other thing. So that's the second one usually changes. Good question.
And is the on the front of that the Irialis, or is it?
It is the Irialis, but with this one, I hear it this way all the time too. Like that, he said it, ye, but then you could say ye ti, and people, it's the same thing. And so I do think there could be some intensive studies done on how this thing works. And so typically when you're putting these together, like if you looked up the negative imperfective of this, you would see Tlein That's what it looks like. I didn't see you. So you look up a negative, or sorry, a negative perfective. I think I said imperfective. You look up a negative perfective, get rid of the Tlein, add a suffix that looks just like the possessive suffix that we learned, the relational suffix. That's how you tie two verbs together. It's usually how you get it. Like, at auch de she. I am hoping, and then you'd say ewunech would be you healed. But then and then this one actually doesn't change a whole lot. Tlein ewunech, you didn't heal. So then you'd have at auch de she ewunechi. I hope you get better. A little bit of an advanced thing, but there's a cheat code, which is look up the negative perfective, throw a suffix on that. Number 17. Jen kat katachadushu.
Anash idechsti an away yak eyi atwe ka shadechani jit awati we kuhanti sahan agashayet.
Sheesh. Nashkidech sati. Cha'ana we yake atwe kashadahani jit awati. We kuhanti sahan akashayet. Verbs. What are they at?
Titi.
Yep. And there's this locative suffix, so we're going to grab it.
Is yak eyi a verb or is that more of a verbal noun at this point?
That's a great question. So see how we just added this suffix on there? There's another suffix that works really well for state verbs. Like yake is a state verb. Kesh is a state verb. There's one you put on here, it works exactly the same as that relational suffix or possessive suffix, but it's always low. And what that does is it turns a verb into an adjective. So for example, Tlitzin, strong. Tlitzin yishawat, strong woman. Yakei, good. Yakei yidush, good cat. Tlichan, stinky. Tlichani tlich, stinky garbage, right? It's a real easy one, like relatively speaking, like throw a suffix on there. And now a state verb has become an adjective. And that's why you see at with it a lot. So yakei at, a good thing. Shushakei at, an evil thing. Oh, we got one more verb.
Agashayet.
Yeah.
Shayet. Shayet.
Okay. Cha'an away. Anybody catch what that was? What's that?
Just be with.
Cha'an could mean just with it. In this case, you have an identical thing that is different. A lot of times you hear it as cha'an ku'a.
However.
Yeah, however, or maybe nevertheless.
Oh, nevertheless. Okay.
That's a good. And so, cha'an is the first time I heard this. There's a speaker named Shagun who used to live in Whitehorse, and we were coming up with descriptive. I was really pushing people to get descriptive with the language because I noticed like we could name things. I was like, we took a bag of stuffed animals, and they were all local stuffed animals. We were in Carcross. And I had them, we broke into groups. Every group had a Lingít speaker. This was probably 10 years ago. And then people went up and they selected an animal and hid it from everybody. And they wrote 5 descriptive sentences about it. From least obvious to most obvious in terms of getting us to guess what the thing is. So if you got a beaver, 2 big teeth isn't your first sentence, it's maybe your last one. And so they had this thing called Kuhaantí, which is a chipmunk. And she said, or no, she said, Yikugenk owe hastujin, Jaan owe haskutzati, at joe an hasach atcha, there it is. They have little hands, but they still exist because they eat with them. It was such a cute little sentence. It's so cute. And so also cha'an, it was a really good use of cha'an. So nevertheless, good thing, and that could be plural. With Kuhaantí sahan.
That orphan Sahang.
Okay. Anashkidech sati. What did we come up with for that?
They became poor.
They are poor.
Are poor.
Yeah, if it was wusati, I would say became. There are some where the perfective, it's not a true sort of past tense sort of a move. Like sati is, wusati is became. Kashatahani jeet awati.
The leader gave them.
Not quite, because you got kashatahani jeet. So this is functioning as just a noun.
Came into the clan leader's possession.
They gave it to the leader. And if we think of the last sentence, the subject of the last sentence is the subject of this sentence. So this is the guy who left with the kids. So to make it make sense in our English brain, we could say he is poor, nevertheless, whoops, I did that wrong. He gave nice things to the leader. Like however we want to sort of rearrange that in our mind. Kuhaantí sahan aqashayit. This is a complicated verb mode. It's called purposive, which just means, I think we'll probably change the name someday. It's just so it could happen, so it could be. And what do you think that verb is talking about?
Which verb?
This one right here.
I came up with
Something about getting married.
That's right.
let them marry.
Yes, yes. So you, coming back to like kind of cheat codes, if you look up a hortative verb and you throw a T at the end, and if it ends with a vowel, it likes to have Y-I-T at the end. That's so it could happen. Right? So aqasha, let them marry them. Aqashayit, so he could marry that orphan Sahan. Okay. Well, we hit our blank space, which must mean it's break time. Take 5. We gotta get like 14 more sentences.
Yeah, are we going through fast enough to get all?
What's that?
Are we going through fast enough to get all translated tonight?
We'll see. We got 1 hour. Okay, take 5. You got 5-minute break, and we're right back at it.
Oh, because
real quick before we go back to finishing, we did talk about drowning just a second ago. So there are two different main ways to talk about it, which is really interesting in Tlingit, I think. Because you have hinch yeosini, or yeosine. And what do you think that is literally?
The water killed them.
What's that?
The water killed them.
Well, it's like the water did it to them. That's all it says. Like it's a very indirect way to talk about that. And then this, you could also say, well, I guess there's three ways. And then wuta is literally they sank. Like that's, you know, and so it's really interesting. I guess there's tried to drown him. Okay. That's put them down to the bottom of the water. Okay. And then wuddakhunak, which means to remove the khun, which I would have to study that one more. But that's the most literal way to say drowning. But I think there's this really interesting thing with this project is George and Marge, like I would always challenge them. I was like, I got this idea from Qanaq, Fred White, who used to host these meetings with elders 12 years ago or so. And I'm sure he'd done it before then, but he would just say, what do you know that you don't hear anymore? And they would just come up with all these little phrases, like, and that's where we got really good documentation for terms like satqoyeqa, which means at long last. And then a few that maybe were just a little bit miscoded in some of the dictionaries. And just having them talk about it really helped us understand how those worked. And so as we did Kuhaantí, and this Kuhaantí, it's the first story that's coming out, but it's the very last story I worked on with George and Marge. And so we never finished it. And so it was kind of emotional as we sort of got towards the end, as I, you know, because they were so fun to work with, and when they passed away, it was heartbreaking, so heartbreaking, because they were my armor, you know, because doing this type of work, teaching Tlingit, and really trying to motivate people to shift our perspectives of language, makes you a target for a lot of people. And that includes Tlingit people who would criticize me and my work and stuff. But, you know, when people would say, no, that's wrong, I say, okay, go tell George and Marge. You know, and so they were a really good boost. And Nora was alive at that time too, so I'd work with Nora. I think I worked with them every Friday, and I worked with Nora every Thursday or something. So it was just a wonderful time to just have to spend with all of them. So I get it. I need a reader. If you haven't read yet, it's a great time to do it.
I can read it.
Oh.
Dachnach yeti has lenash ka dachnach yeti qua ganash yete asiti ka tlech has ushkek.
Sheesh. Dachnach yeti haslanach kadachnach yeti qua kanashkdech hasati katel has ushchet. Okay.
Did we skip some lines?
Yeah,
I think we did.
Okay, we'll come back to that one later. What did I do? Okay. Who wants to read 19?
I can do it.
Okay.
I can read it, I guess.
We got one.
Shadasa, well, glasses. Shadasa tleth atke dultheki ye on a snake. Het ye uwati awe duta wadak du hook kaduin atqua su utlenach.
Chadasa kleshat duliechi ye asnech. Heshi woyati awe tu wadach de chuchatu in ach tsubutlanach. Okay. I like how I talk about people criticizing and then I do make a big mistake. Okay. Verbs.
Dulheki.
No.
Yes, nicht.
Yeah, away.
Yati. Yati.
To adopt.
Not a verb.
Really? Wasn't I with
قول في ناس
We'll grab the tsu because that affects it. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what is chadasa?
Whatever.
whatever.
Whatever. Then we got a verb and a verb and a verb. Dutuwadach.
I got her because of her.
Oh.
I found by virtue of it.
Yeah. What? Because of it, due to it, by virtue of it, on the strength of it, encouraged by it. I'm going on the strength of my grandmother. On one condition. It's interesting. So yeah, because it's usually like if you say due to what, because of that person. But that achaway is a little bit more generally because of, and this is like on the strength of someone. That's usually how I like to think of them. Okay. Duchuch kaduin ach.
husband and his family.
Okay. Okay. Verb city. Tesh atch deshyechi. Find anything for that?
Yeah, we haven't made it. Haven't done it yet.
So we do have made, let's see, maybe we'll go here for this. We'll go back to this dictionary. We'll go look up yech. We do have two very similar verbs in terms, like, they're pretty much identical. So this verb root does mean to make or to use or to whittle away at something. So when you have this, which you often hear as ashyech or alshayech, that does mean to make something, to construct it. He told him to build a large boat. They're constructing a road. They're just making stories up about me. So that is shayech, and we do have dushyechi. We have klesh dushyechi. But then we see this one, capital N means noun. So noun with this suffix on it, and then you have the kind of the exact same verb. So it gets a little tricky because if you say nadak outshayech, they made a table. But if you said nadak outshayech, I would think they used it for a table. Now it's like it's not a table, like it's a cooler or it's a rock, but they used it as a table. So in this case, this is to use this thing. And so it's a tricky concept, like the difference between these two. Because you might say, and that means use our language. Go ahead, use it. Make it a thing of use. And in this case, you do have which coming back in terms of what happens in Lingít is you have a fourth person indirect object, and a fourth person subject, which does make things confusing. But when you put this together, whatever was not used. It's a bit of a complicated construction. And so, but if you said all whatever is used, so it can work that way as well.
Question. With that phrasing, what is the do doing before the hleyehi?
People don't use it. Whatever people don't use. But in this case, like, and this is where the fourth person in Lingít is really interesting, because sometimes it is people. Sometimes it's just like, it's just not used. So in this case, you'd say, it's something that's not used. It's inedible. It's edible. So it depends on the verbs, like it's this relationship between the fourth person and the verb in terms of how we would say a similar thing in English. Like if you say, like this is wild, like here's one that's pretty wild. So if you said, wa sa dua ach. Anybody know what that might be?
How do
What do
people
they call
hear? How do people understand?
Well, it's interesting, and I think it's okay. It would be, how does it sound? Right? And you could say dasa dua ach. What's that sound? So like the fourth person, it just does really interesting things. And so the more we see it, the more we start to become familiar with it, because I don't think it truly exists in English. Usually you have just an absence of a subject. Like you say, it was broken, right? It broke, right? Kids say it all the time about these nice new dishes we got. I can't complain about the dishes, or else any poor people can use the dishes. I'm fine with anybody using these dishes. Okay. Okay. Ye as nicht.
I got they saved.
Yes. And in this case, where we would find this one is here. Whoops. Computer rebooted. So we're going to go into the database and find neich, because this is another cool verb. So going down to this verb root neich, it does a bunch of things. Save, heal, and cure. And so just in terms of how this word works in English, it's very like, because you could say save, if you said save them and save it, well, I guess if I save them could be different, right? So we need context to understand what we're saying. If there's a boat full of kittens floating down the river, if I said save them, I'm telling you to rescue them, make sure they survive. But if there's 2 donuts left and I would like to eat 2 donuts, I said save them. I'm saying set them aside. It's a similar concept, and we use the same word, and it works exactly the same in Lingít. So you could say ausanech. They healed it, they healed them, they saved them, like, you know, I don't know how, they were like falling off a cliff, or I don't know, someone told me this wild story. They said they were kids and playing by this, in New York, by this big waterfall, and she was a little kid and she got into a raft and somehow it got too close to the waterfall. It started going, and someone and her mother yelled, and someone just reached out and grabbed her and like probably saved her. Right, kept her from going over the waterfall. And then this verb, it means to cure. So this is the verb we're looking at, and it also is the same one that's used when the kushta comes and takes people. And we'll see it in another story that we're going to work on later. I don't know when that
Is it
story
the
is.
same word you use for like saving things for, save food for the winter, put things aside?
Well, there's one for like storing food for the winter, like it has its own verb.
Uh,
But this would be like, yeah, I would think of it more as like, hey, save that pizza. We're gonna eat it tomorrow um, for lunch. So it seems to have a little bit more immediacy than, because for Tlingit, when you talk about putting up food for the winter, we're thinking about filling up like gigantic pantries of food because we just that puts us into a mode. And we are looking at this right here. So this is a repetitive form of a verb. So there's big language in this story, but if you can spot neich in there, you can go through the resources and probably find it. So like I say, go to the verb dictionary first. And if you say, okay, I see the S classifier and I see neich, something to do with saving, but then you could also go check the verb database and say, okay, well, let me go look up neich in there and scroll through and see if I could find it. And you might find it here in ye as neich. They regularly save it. And in this case, coming back to the way that context shows us meaning, whatever was not used, she saved. And it's interesting because we don't get like a true subject switch. So you could signal that for your reader or listener. You could say sahan aweh, but she does get named right here. But oftentimes, like there's something that shows us that we're switching the subject, but we don't really get it here. But that's who's doing the saving. So she set aside, she saved anything that wasn't used. Hishi wayati. I think we did this one already. Everybody know what that is?
it wasn't long.
Not long after.
And then, by virtue of, or we could just say because of her, like however we want to do that.
A question about the Enoch. How do we know it was his family, not her family?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess it could be her family. Like she's married now, so it is her family. But I would probably interpret that as his family. That's interesting.
Probably by context, then, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a
There's
context.
nothing in the language. They didn't mention children, so.
Yeah, right. So.
But I initially thought it was the other family, but they were already rich. The leader.
We just stick with the ambiguity that we have in the Tlingit. It's a good question. Yeah, because once you like, it just seems like in my mind, once you name someone through a kinship and then you throw du, like I think of that because it's the way that you tend to do stuff like that is you'd say, yeah, achla du ish. So but then you've got du in both cases here. But I would say du cha. I don't know. I just have to think about it. Good question. I'll ask a speaker.
Well, and if we put their family, then that almost implies that it should be Hasta,
Yeah,
wouldn't it?
which is interesting because in the context of a story, I use gender to help us see who we're talking about. But in the context of how Tlingit works, there's no gender in there. So I'm usually using there as a singular and them alls as a plural because I don't know how else to do it. Okay, we gotta get to the verb though. Tuwushanach.
Became rich.
Yes. And what does the su do to it?
Again.
Became rich.
Yes. A high tone su after.
Became
A
rich.
low tone su again became wealthy. I would say that's what the perfective is again doing in this case, is they became. It could be they were. You could interpret it either way. In the context of the story, though, it seems like became is the better fit. Ooh, we got 10 more.
And how committed are we to
Huh?
finishing it tonight? Like 20 or so minutes working on like 2 of them, you know?
No more questions. I'm just kidding. Okay, somebody read this, and we'll get to, well, we could skip the one we read already. So,
Ayuk Sidikat yak a duji yan kaudaga yak a atka kashke naat ka said ka keys.
ayuk takat yake at tujiyan kautaga yake at ha kashake na at kasait kakis. You know what? It's a one verb sentence. Thankfully, we have a list.
And Kaudiga.
There's a related verb from this one that talks about putting up food for the winter. Ayuk,
Suddenly.
suddenly. Takat yake at
All the good things.
all the good things.
All good.
Yake at ha food.
Good food.
Yeah, away. Kashake na at
Like beautiful things.
Fancy things.
Fancy clothes.
yeah, fancy clothes. But yeah, kashake is beautiful, nice, fancy. Kaseit kakis.
Necklace and bracelet.
Duji yan kautiga. Is that one in the verb dictionary?
Got accumulated.
Yeah, accumulated. Yeah.
I came up with scattered, and I'm not entirely sure how, especially if accumulated is the answer. That kind of seems the opposite.
Okay, so we don't have it here. So if you don't see it in the verb dictionary, there's a good chance it's not in the database. So
It's
we're gonna go to
It's under Ga too.
oh, is it
The
there?
second Yan Kaudiga. Put
Well,
up,
that's a different
store up,
classifier.
accumulate. Is it?
That's an L classifier. We're looking for a D classifier. This is the verb to put up food for the winter, which we just talked about. How cool was that? And it's related. It's certainly related. But what you have, well, I'll just tell you what you have. You have the same, okay, you have very closely related verbs. These are verb cousins. So the first one, kaudaga, would be for something to accumulate. Like, oh man, there's a whole bunch of furs here. That's way cool. But then the kaushaga would be somebody accumulated it. Someone made it accumulate. So it's a very classic classifier switch that you see in Lingít. For something to be a certain way, and then you switch to a L or S classifier to say, no, somebody did it that way, right? For example, someone might be mad, man, we got a lot of smoked salmon. It's like, no, I put up all that smoked salmon. That's why we got it. I did the L classifier. But as far as like, how can we find the verb? So we're going to take a look at the Lear verb notes, and we're going to go under Ga and see if maybe we have it here. So this is not it. This is not it.
Just maybe.
Kautaga, Yakautaga, that is scattered. So this is an undocumented verb. And what does that mean? That means it's just not written down. We're going to encounter this now and then in Tlingit, even though we have incredible lists of verbs, incredible dictionaries that have been made. There's still so much in the Tlingit language. So that means, one, as we look at this translation, suddenly all these good things accumulated in their possession. Is how it's working. So if you say gen kau daga, that means it accumulated. It got to be a lot. I will work on putting that verb in the dictionary. I don't think I have it either.
Is this related to the word for for snow to pile up?
That one's Tlein. It usually, well, I don't think so.
It's just like, it's very similar to Autogon.
Yeah, but
It means to distribute or to put away or to accumulate. Usually when I hear for snow to be deep, but I guess, let's go look at pile up and see what we got. I think you end up with in daqat, so you have a different qat, which is, I think, if later next semester we'll probably study Jessie Dalton's big speech, and I think she has it here, like their downy feathers were piling up. It was a wonderful, amazing metaphor. Okay. So we do have an undocumented verb here. I do think I'll share the glossary with you folks next week. So
it's also about, and maybe it's just kind of the way it is, but with kaseit, kis, like clearly you're talking about more than one. Right? Why is it not seit and kisk?
oh, yeah, that's a good, like Tlingit does not always have to pluralize.
No, only when
It
there's
was,
a lot.
yeah,
Oh, I see. So
Instead
it's
of
like
you
an
swimming in 'em.
overwhelming amount.
right.
Right.
Yeah, and so, and this was interesting because because the story of this is these stories were worked on by people and there was no attribution in terms of who collected these stories and who wrote them and why they were initially illustrated. And maybe some folks are going to come forward and share that with us. But so we translated it from English to Tlingit, right?
Oh, really?
So I sat down with these, they didn't know these stories, George and Marge,
Really?
right?
That's why it says, and they translated it
Yeah,
on the book.
yeah, right? And so the line was, and then they had lots of good things. And it was good food, fancy clothes, and jewelry.
Right.
Don't have a word for jewelry. And so that also shows you it was written kind of from an English perspective.
Right.
And there is a Tlingit version of the story, but I don't think I've seen it. So. Okay. Who's going to read 21?
Right, I'll do it. Weka shadek hani dachuni nach away do yit has sahan away has to tlak city.
Okay. Wekashadahani dakuni nachawe du yitas sahan awe hastutlak sati. Any verbs there?
Sati.
That's the one. Okay, the leader. What is dakuni nachawe du yitas?
4 people.
Like around his family from, something like that? Around his relatives?
Yeet.
Under him.
Ah. Oh, do we not know yeet?
Is it under?
His
Below him?
son, isn't it?
Huh? It's not under. That's interesting. It's not a directional.
Son.
Oh.
His son.
His or her son.
Away. Eat us, his sons. Which I think is.
Thought it. Oh.
Oh yeah. I forgot, my mom calls me that all the time. Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes when we're deep in translation work, it's like some words are like, oh yeah, of course it is. But what's interesting here, this shows us a neat sentence pattern for stuff that I think people like to say. I have 3 kids. Naskinach oe achyetki. Doesn't require a verb. Because people usually want to say achjiwu or achjiyeti, because English uses has, right? Which is just this connecting verb, right? I have time. I have, and sometimes it is in your possession. But you would say like, I have 3 aunties. I have, whatever. So in this case, the leader has 4 sons.
But it's just the leader, his 4 sons.
Yes. So that's how you would use that sort of thing. So you could say whatever you wanted to say. I have 2. There's 2 dogs. My dogs are 2. So in this case, yeah, like literally, the leader, 4 people. That is his sons.
Like, what is the has doing?
That's how you pluralize a kinship term.
Okay.
Most of them pluralize with a high tone hus. There's a couple that pluralize with a high tone yun. So ach at hus, ach ish hus, ach tla hus, ach tlak hus, ach tlak hus, ach. Almost all of them could pluralize with hus. Then ach dechchan kiyan, ach chun kiyan, ach kaniyan. Those ones usually plural with. It's a kinship pluralizer. Yetki is the only one that doesn't take, I think, the only one that doesn't take one. Okay, 4 sons, Sahan, Hastutlak Sati
Was their sister?
is
Older sister. Or his sister.
their sister, or is a sister to them all. However we want to take care of the third person. Okay. Oh, we read this one already. Yay. Any verbs in there?
Yatiyi. Or yatiyi. Twice.
Okay, that comes from a verb. But this is interesting. This is an adjective. And this is how Lingít likes to take care of. Okay, I spent years trying to get speakers to tell me how to say a 3-legged dog. And then you'd say naskiti chus cake. So you have number yati or yati. It's all low. And that just tells you how. And so dachnach yati 2 of them. People, technically. So when you see dachnach yati 2 of them. So that's telling you it's telling you a number of different things. There are 2 people. And then when you say yati what the is doing here is what we call partitive in like how we talk about Lingít. It just means some of them. You're going to see it all over. We've already seen it in a bunch of different places. Chita, chita, una. That's the same sort of thing that we're seeing right here. But then when you say dachnach yati now what it's telling you is I'm breaking them into groups. Right? 2 of them. Oh, hastanach. That's a verb. Chadachnach yati qaqanash gidei chasati. Is a verb. The nice thing about this point of the story is we've seen all of these verbs already, right? So two of them, what?
Or rich.
Rich.
Are rich. Two of them, though, kwa is the same thing as ku'a. Anashkidecha seti. Poor.
Are poor.
And kashas ushchik.
Unlucky, right?
Unlucky.
Okay. Okay. Who wants to read 23?
Can I read it?
Okay, good.
Yadachna lenar he a yadu ik has du hunt has qa den awe it Dane has du dat jou seta ka dak ye us ne we yak ye du ik
Okay. Yadachtach lenarchi a. Yadu ik has du chantas qa'atin awe. Kedain has du dat yaw satak. Qadake usnage. We yak a du sikki. Verbs.
Kedain?
Kedain, that's an adverb, so we can use it in the verb phrase.
Okay.
Ka'adin.
Yep. Du chantas qa'atin.
Usnage.
Ye away. Dak ye usnage. Okay. Yadachdach shenachia. These two wealthy ones. Yadu ikhas.
Are they brothers?
Yeah, her brothers. So this one, that is a gendered kinship term. Awe ka. So verb, and verb. We yakei adus ikhi.
Little dishes.
What's that?
Is it like a bunch of little dishes?
They're not little, but it is plural and possessed. So her good dishes. Okay. Verb number 1 is complicated. It's a plural form of walking. So ought is the verb root. Because there's a lot going on here, duchant has wa'at would be they went to see her. They came by her, they came, or them. So a plural they went to visit a singular them, or to go be by them. What the qa'atin is doing is to say when they used to visit her. So there's a lot that's packed in there. So we'll just sort of, we're not going to deal with all the parts that are in there. There are these different things that are in there. It's what we call a conditional and a decessive. It's a complicated verb form. But yeah, you could say this in an easier way. You could say, "Dukhant haswu'ati," when they came to visit her. And it would be doing a similar thing. But these speakers like to be fancy sometimes. Did we come up with anything for this? We might not have gotten that far, and that's fine. Because we can look it up too.
I came up with took good care of it.
Yes. So this Yao Satak, just for practice, we're not worried about translating this whole thing. We're going to go look up talk in the verb dictionary. And we do have two Yao Sataks here. And I'm pretty sure she's not poking them in the face. Because then we see this ka, da, Yao Satak. And we do have this da in front of it. So that tells us it's the second one, to care for or to serve, which we'll just go take a look at. So not that one. I cared for my grandchild. My mother is taking care of them. It also showed us to serve. They attended to my needs. So it is like to take care of something. This is a verb that Norman James used a lot to talk about taking care of our future generations with the decisions we're making right now. And the way he'd say it is he'd say, Hastu ya'ak adata weha yausatak. We're taking care of a place reserved for them. So it's an important one in Lingít. It does, for me, if I think of it, I think of someone coming to my home and I'm just making sure they have everything they need, that they're taken care of. And when you put kadain in front of it, this is an adverb. So there are quite a few of these verb roots that you can add dain to. Dain makes an adverb out of a verb root. The verb root here is ke, like yak-a. So from yak-a you get kadain. You can have chetsin dain with strength. You can have nikdain with the intention to cause harm. Chundain with the intention to hurt. Kudzidain, amazingly. There's quite a few. There's quite a few of these. Shishtukdain would be purely. So in this case, when they used to visit her, she took good care of them. And that leaves us with our last verb. Dak ye usnech.
I got, and they'd fix her good dishes, but I don't think that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I used her good dishes.
Yes, and so
Brought out.
brought out. So what we have here is a handling verb.
It's the dock.
Ye ausene.
And the dock.
Dock, which we just talked about, out from the shadows into the open. Because in this case, if you got really good dishes, you keep them stored nicely. You bring them out when people come over. And so this was fun, like a little insider scoop when we were going through the illustrations. I think they had I can't remember what they had. Oh, it was all on a platter, just like a flat platter. And I was like, oh, we've got to do like a really nice carved dish, because that's you would bring out the good stuff. And Tlingit, we would do this. If you look at, if you study bentwood boxes, you'll see one side has curvier lines and a single salmon trout head for the eye. And if you look at the other side, it's got more angled lines and a double eye. And it's usually showing like a transformation piece, like raven turning into a human or something like that. You would usually have the curvier single side facing out. But when people were coming over, you'd turn all the boxes around. And everyone gets to see the angled side with the double eye. It's pretty wild stuff. How about this one? Who wants to read 24?
I go. Ya kanashagidye aklek kadain hasdudat Yawastak.
Sheesh. Yakanashkidea. Tleshkadein has to dot yawustak. Any verbs there?
That was talk.
Yeah, what?
Let's do dot. Yeah, that was talk.
So now we're seeing kedain, and we're seeing the negative form of this verb. So it's a negative perfective. Yakanashkidea, the poor ones. And what about, how would we interpret that?
Or brothers?
Well, Tleshkadein has to dot yawustak.
She didn't take care of him.
They didn't take care of him.
She did take good care of them. Who wants to
So
read
it's
that?
not talking about taking care of the things, it's talking about taking care of the brothers.
Yeah, so when you're using this verb, dot yausitak, that means to take care of people. And that really means to tend to their needs. Because you could say watching them, you could say helping them. There's a whole bunch of different things you could say. But this verb in particular would be like, you come to my house, I'm going to take care of you. You need food, you need to know where something is. Like, it's just like you're helping them out in all these different ways.
I'll do this one. Sahan ye yawaka hech atuash ushgu we kanash gide a kach has ahai we yakei ich.
Sheesh. Sahanye yawaka. Heshach tuwa ushka kanashkite a ka chasachai we yakei sik. Any verbs?
Ye yawaka.
Mm-hmm. Any others?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Sahan is a name. Sahan, verb. We kanashkite the poor ones. What about a kach?
I got from the top,
Yes.
from its top.
From off the surface of it is what we're going to end up with. Verb. Weyakeitzik.
A nice dish.
Okay. Yeyawaka.
Said to them.
No, there's no to. So yausaka would be they said this to them. Yeyawaka would be said. They said this thing. Now we're going to get into quotation marks because we've got yeyawaka. Eshach tuwa ushka.
I don't want.
Want the poor ones to eat off the good dishes.
Right. I don't want the poor ones to eat off of these good dishes. I think this will be our last one. We'll come back and finish these last 4 sentences.
I mean, I'd be okay with saying like another hour or so.
Verbs. What do we got? There is a verb for ku'u, but this is the noun that's from that verb. So these poor people. So in this case, it is ku'u is people. This is a verb. Well, these are two. Then you end with two verb phrases. They're two separate ones. Any predictions on this?
It's like the other
Use.
Yes. So what
Not good they will feel.
What's that?
Not good they will feel. I don't know. They will be here. I don't know.
Well,
Kuhaantí will be.
what people don't use. So we don't have tesh here. So in this case, you end up with these poor people, the things they use. We get heshkadengukati.
They become not good, or they will.
Yes, will be ruined. So this is interesting because this was the English for this, and I was wondering how they were going to say it because there's a couple different ways you could talk about ruining something. You can destroy it. You can you could just wreck it. So destroying it would be hutsk auslayech, hutsk auslayech.
It was,
Like just
sounds like she's bringing in more karma than just the water spirit, more bad karma.
this is the big why. Chaosane would be just to just wreck it, and then in this case, hishkadengukati. So kadengukati means it's going to improve. Hishkadengukati, it's gonna degrade.
I just found the English version of this from 1914,
Oh, really?
and it's yeah. I don't want them to use my good dishes. They might leave the marks of poverty on them.
Yes, right. Yes.
Dang.
Ouch.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Let's go. We'll power through. Let's do it.
Power. Kletoch etich kuacha yakudach wuna we duchana.
Hek atak itikhoa chayakutach wuna awadkhana.
I see winter.
Well, there's winter's built in there, but it's say tek a tak itik.
One of them.
Well, it's spring, isn't it?
The leftovers of winter.
One spring. Chayakutach. Anybody get that one?
Suddenly.
Yes. It's a variation of chayuk, but it means the same thing. I don't know. Same speakers, but they use both different forms. Chayakutach. Suddenly
He died.
he died.
Her husband.
Yeah, away.
What is Khan not Chuk?
What's that?
Why Khan not Chuk?
Khana is just like partner.
Oh, okay.
You know, life. I would say like life partner.
Okay.
But like if you went somewhere and introduced someone as your khana, they might assume you guys are married.
Right.
Doesn't it mean like the one directly beside you?
Yes.
Oh.
It's a very sweet term.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Better than who can shut.
I'm gonna read 20.
Awe tlel unach zu kanash gidech usiti wagao.
Highlighting verbs.
Where's the T?
Yeah, away. And what is aqa away? And then,
After that.
oh, whoops, I got to highlight. So, kesh ushnach.
Not rich.
So, kanash gidech usiti.
Again.
Again.
Yeah, she became poor
Became
again.
poor.
Wigao. At that time.
That time.
Okay. Oh, here comes the you do a G part. Let's read it. Anybody not read yet tonight?
Me, I haven't.
Okay.
Ye Waduaji Hes Hesla Ach Awe We Ka Anash Gede Duik Has Tlesh Tuch on Has Duin Ach Awe Ye Wune.
Sheesh. You do a G. Hes ushait. A joy we knashkide a do ik has testush on has to in. A joy ye wune. Verbs.
Would you eat? Gee.
You do a G.
Elushhetl.
Schait.
Jan.
Tulan.
Hes tush on.
Tushan.
Ye wune. More verbs. Verb. Achawe. Because of that. Kadashkite a do ik has.
Her poor brothers.
Verb. Has to in.
Or brother. Well,
With them all. Because of that. Okay. Yeo do a G. There's the D again.
She is like.
Anybody find the verb?
People thought.
Yes. I don't know.
This verb means to suspect or to think it is so. It's a very good one to learn because you could say yehwaji. I think so. That's what that one means. Yehwaji. And then you could tie some other verb to it. Yeuduaji. The people believed or thought or, it's like this is your prediction verb, right? Hesh ushchet.
The bad luck one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
The bad luck.
Wasn't unlucky.
Well, was unlucky. She was unlucky. This is a verb. You could say shechet, lucky, tesh ushchet, not lucky, with an L classifier. You switch to SH classifier, tesh ushchet, unlucky. Because with her, do ikas, because her poor brothers, tesh tush an.
She wasn't kind.
She is unkind. She wasn't kind with them all. Because of that yewune.
It happened.
Yeah.
Yewe.
That sounds familiar.
Who wants to read the last sentence? We made it.
The moral of the story.
Did I read it? Kushtayach wasa lenach we ha we ka astu ya ayagune.
Kushtiyach wasa shenach wecha hastuya ayakune. One verb or two verbs. Anybody know what kushtiyach is?
Regardless.
Yes. Really good adverb means it doesn't matter, regardless of that. Wasa shenach wecha.
regardless
How rich you are?
How wealthy a person is. Hastu ya ayakune.
Them respect them.
Right.
Respect them. Command. Boom. Did it. Finished. Okay. Any questions?
The husband also gets some flack for this whole story.
What's that?
The husband should also get some flack for this whole story.
He died.
Well, after he left, his wife was still gossiping about her
Well,
and what she did as a kid.
yeah.
Maybe he's the bad luck. But I don't know if he disturbed any water spirits, and I don't know if he had poor brothers where he's like, "Don't you eat off my nice dishes? You make them bad. You make them gross." But yeah, so bad things do happen. Like starts bad, ends bad.
So have we all passed our midterm?
What's that?
Have we all passed our midterm now?
Yep, A's for everybody.
Heck yeah.
I say the story's missing a hachigua somewhere.
Yeah, there's a hutchqua, right? It's told, right?
What is hachqua?
That's what you get.
That's what you get.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'm glad we got to the moral of the story, or else I would have left thinking she was just me. Back to the moral of the story.
That part with the dishes was like crazy.
That's harsh. Harsh stuff. Okay, great stuff, everybody. Book release parties tomorrow if you're in the Kuhaantí area. It's 5 to 7 at Kuhaantí Itika Elizabeth Bratrovich Hall in down near the village. So we'll see you folks on Tuesday. Tlein. Good job getting through.
What's tomorrow?
There is a book launch party for Kuhaantí.
Yay, quercetin.
And if you are
I will invite my Akwani people.
Yes, come if you can make it. If you know kids, have the kids come. It'll be fun.
Yeah, and if you can't be there in person on the Tlingit and Hinoa site, there's a Zoom link for it as well.
And a
And
cheese.
will that recording be available afterwards?
I believe so.
I'll actually be zooming evening to Egan.
Oh, that's right.
What time is it?
There's conflicting events tomorrow. Although I think ours, but I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, it's right before, but that's right when crazy time.
Yeah,
What time is the thing?
What's that?
What time is it happening?
Cajun Gala, 5 o'clock.
Ah.
I know. It was like the year that I was in Edinburgh, I got one.
Cheese, Johan. Okay.
Sheesh.